Hello, everyone. Welcome. Do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box and let us know where you're joining us from today. So, for this session, we're joined by Jane Morrison, UX and Design Director at Reason Digital. So, just before I hand over to Jane, just want to share a couple of house rules and pointers for today's session with you. The session is being recorded and will be uploaded to watch on demand at a later date. All of the slides and any other resources that Jane goes through will also be made available to you, so don't worry if you miss anything along the way. During the session, do ask any questions in the Q&A section, which Jane can address at the end of the presentation, and do feel free to share any comments, experiences, or of course any top tips that you might have in the chat section. Finally, if any of you encounter any sound or image issues, just let us know again in the chat and we'll do our very best to get the session back on track for you all. Without further ado, let me hand over to Jane.
Hello. Brilliant. I'm just checking my slides are up. They are. Hello. Ooh, click something. Excellent. It works. Hello, I'm Jane. I'm the Design Research Director at Reason Digital. We're a social enterprise working with partners on projects where we can do good things with technology. So you might be able to spot me in this lovely picture of my team. This was from a recent team day. So I was going to start with a little story. My the other week, my kid was in a school show that was themed around AI. So it was quite ambitious. There were kids traipsing around the canteen and playground in a kind of promenade style piece. The technology didn't really work, and the thimble-sized boy that was playing Alan Turing dried up for important parts of the dialogue. Every single piece explained to the audience why AI was terrible. That was it was a scourge that was out to steal and confuse and depress and fabricate and endanger. And yes, I too can prompt Google Gemini to make rubbish pictures. In one, a cute little girl shouted for help until her mother coughed up her bank details and then she morphed into a robot. In another, a boy started spouting extremist rhetoric and they didn't even put on a T-bar. So I do have some sympathy. I'm your friendly neighborhood innovation grouch. I've been working in technology and new media for 25 years and have always been the yin to my colleagues' sort of optimistic yangs. I like a rot. I prefer pencil and notebook. I'm pretty good at making things crash. I am always the last person to be convinced. I attempt to put a positive spin on this by framing myself as an ambassador from reality for my tech forward, nerd loving friends. So obviously, my instant knee jerk is that AI is going to suck. And we know we're not in an AI is coming phase. It's already here. It's in our products. Um, I've seen new technology change things before. In fact, this picture doesn't really do my experience justice. And in fact, the crappy face app that I used to age me did so in an insultingly small amount. So I've put it through again. Um, so what I want to do is use that experience um, to understand what might be happening here and how I can cope with those changes in the future. So, when I was working in the BBC mobile team just before the release of the first iPhone in about 2007, I had the benefit of colleagues showing me bigger and bigger phone screens powered by better and better batteries, and the newest edge of technical quality available for images and video. So I could see that there might be a future where we would accept watching TV on a mobile device. And while we were developing the iPlayer in around sort of 2006, we were carrying out research into new behaviors of video watching. We went and spoke to people that basically weren't using broadcast television anymore. So I met someone whose entire house was wall to wall VHSs and he never needed to use the actual telly for anything. And I met a couple of students who would do something unheard of at the time. Instead of sticking the telly on, they'd tee up one YouTube video after another on a laptop, balanced on an occasional table in the corner of their room. So it was stuff that they wanted to watch, no TV license required. At the time, they weren't just outliers, they were on a completely different planet. So I know that I need to see it to understand how it might work and what could happen next. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit in this presentation. So Let's say headline definition, and I'm not going into the details. As I've clearly explained, I am a pencil and paper person. AI is when the computer does a bit of thinking for you in order to make something or talk to you in a vaguely human way or help you find some stuff. It's not really a search engine, although it could put a search results into a sort of digestible written or spoken format, like at the top of your Google results right now. And currently, we can catch it out with fairly trivial stuff like maths questions because it depends on amalgamating big old piles of existing stuff rather than doing much actual thinking. Commercial tech development looks for utility and usage without any particular conscience. Would it be useful for a computer to write an essay you didn't want to write? Sure, you might want to pretend that you wrote it, and they might write it by stealing essays from lots of people who wrote them before. In the last week, people noticed that the Chicago Sun-Times published a list of 15 summer reads, of which only 5 were actual real books. And the Daily Telegraph banged out an article about a high-income family having to cut down on how many holidays they were having because their school fees were so expensive. 3 of the family members were called Al. AI, anyone? And the other 2 were called Harry and Barry. Talking about not being able to add up, the timings in the article miscounted the length of time that the family had been in the UK and the number of children that they actually had. So I can quite happily talk doom for you, as I'm sure that you can to me. What next? As time goes on, perhaps more and more of the internet will just be servers talking to other servers, making up stories to enrage one or other group of employees to read during their breaks from feeding more and more of the rainforests into the power stations to keep the servers running. So far, so depressing. But wait, let's not do that. Don't go. The internet might have been conceived by idealists, imagining free access to information and education for all, but that was never actually real. Moneyed interests have always been trying to influence our experience of the world. This isn't a new problem, and I actually find that pretty reassuring. Every time a new innovation hits the public consciousness, lots of people freak out and announce the end of society. Humans, and when I say humans, I mean me, are far better at imagining bad things than good things. It's not just cliched to run to the most pessimistic conclusion. It's actively problematic. If we conclude that it's all terrible and we should avoid it at all costs, we fail to engage with it and we leave it to the people who really don't care about the negative outcomes to play with the technology on their own. For those of us that have chosen to make a positive impact, we know that we can influence the outcomes. Society hasn't fallen apart yet. It will continue to evolve. Yes, there have been negative outcomes to technical advances, and legislation is historically slow to respond to problems, but it does come. We're in the week of disposable vape ban finally coming in. People are working to measure impacts and implications and do something about them. But rather than focusing on just trying to prevent the negative impacts, there's an optimistic approach to tackling this too. That is finding the better applications of the technology. Apparently, we just need to wield the technology, according to Google Gemini. We're in the privileged position of not having to think about profit first when we're conceiving our profits and our products and services, and we can prioritize impact instead. Ethical use of technologies does influence the profit-centered folk too, because if people value it, the market will follow that. iPlayer was never going to kill YouTube, but it makes a bunch of public service content available that adheres to strict editorial standards and isn't trying to sell you vitamin powder or shapewear. And having that editorially good content has influenced the big streamers to compete with their own quality content. So for those of us trying to do good, this is a new opportunity to either find the good in AI or tweak it to be good. The good news is I strongly feel I don't need to pretend to be Little Miss Sunshine to do this. So I give you the grouch list. For the purpose of this talk, and let's be honest, for my life, I'm attempting to use my inner grouch for good. Rather than deny what's natural, I'm going to lean into it and use it to help me. So I'm going to complain a little bit more. I'm sorry. I know this has been negative, but I promise you there is going to be some optimism right at the end. So it's sneaky. It's used to pretend you've done something that was really made by computers off the back of content stolen from creatives. Secondly, it's thirsty. It's making us use vastly more processing energy and costing the planet to generate often very trivial things. There's lots of graphs that are being produced about this. It's quite hard to pin down the data at the moment, but we need to keep looking at this. Thirdly, it's often wrong. We can all laugh at 15-fingered women modeling ham dresses, but hallucinations are undermining people's understanding of the world, and we trust it too much. If it seems to be doing such a great job, when will we notice when it screws up? That Telegraph article was actually so easy to take apart. The moment someone got past the kind of rage bait of it all and asked, is this actually real? There's a real risk to organizations too. This is an actual advert I got trying to get me to use a different language learning app. And there's absolutely insane picture of some sort of reading, like learning model that they've come up with by using clearly generative image making. Um, just tells me that this organization is not to be trusted. Um, so as real people get more used to trusting that little summary at the top of search results, there is more risk for companies providing the reliable information. People get misled by the info, but they also might not go to the site where where the full context is, and that means that those sites producing that content aren't getting the benefit of the onward journeys and support in the case of charity sites. So there is a real issue with this sort of level of trust, especially when we know that some of that content might be wrong. It's biased. So it turns out the giant wealth of human knowledge in the large language models are generally too white, too male, too cis, too straight, too able-bodied compared to the actual world that we live in. And you can see what the implications are when you put in some prompts like this. Um, Furthermore, generative AI isn't too hot on context, so it will happily put a marginalized person into a Nazi uniform. And then also, it's disempowering. We're using it for the wrong things. Why get a computer to pretend to be creative and leave humans to do the repetitive, boring stuff? That seems crazy. So, every project needs a good challenge statement. And what I've done for you, you're welcome, is I've helpfully generated 5 here. So I've got an inspiring list of exciting problem statements for us to explore. Good news, rainbows and unicorns. So let's think about how we can use those. Firstly, let's look at sneaky. So it shouldn't be sneaky. We decide how transparent we can be. We are in control of the interfaces that we design using AI. One of the services that we're most proud of at Recent Digital is called Is This Okay? It was a chatbot service that was made in collaboration with Missing People and Childline to help young adults to understand if they were at risk of being groomed into child sexual exploitation or gang culture. We partnered with social workers and through them, young people themselves to co-design this service. And what we realized was that what is often like an irritant, I'm being stuck talking to a computer, is actually a genuine benefit in this experience. The chatbot introduced itself as just that, allowing young people to feel safe to ask questions that they might not be able to voice out loud if it was an actual person. AI could make this conversation even more natural, and with training, read the questions better and never once pretend to be anything other than a dumb robot, confidential, neutral, and contained. Another example is a client of ours who provides services to courts. Sometimes the human interpreters are at risk for those standing trial, and a reliable AI translation would actually be safer. So it shouldn't be thirsty. I'm going to fess up. I don't know how to do this yet. But the first step is to investigate, and that's how we approach our projects. What we need to do is understand the excesses of commercial AI and then put that cost benefit of using within our control. So this is how thirsty OpenAI tells us it is. So even if it's only that bad, let's not ask it to draw too many pictures of ourselves as Viking lords or action figures. Sorry for this presentation. Instead, blending reusable conversation pieces or data into generated sentences only when our experiences absolutely need them. This is another opportunity for transparency. If we can see how much we're spending, we can make informed choices. In our team, we've assessed the carbon footprint of software tools, and it's helped us to find efficiency and make some informed choices. I believe we should use AI tools, but we should do so knowing the cost. We shouldn't trust it. So, well, don't we all want to avoid the hard yards in tasks sometimes? This is super attractive. However, some of this is about making sure the right data is in the system in the first place and about accepting that we need to put the right human checks and balances in place. We know that many of our charity clients, people like Anna Freud Centre, the King's Fund, Diabetes UK, provide extremely trustworthy information to people. You can see the sort of topics that Anna Freud is handling here to a young people audience. So we've been collaborating with the Anna Freud Centre to experiment with this, training AI to only use trusted data sources and to quote some text exactly where the wording itself is clinically approved. We can work with it to develop the right boundaries and use our charity partners' expertise to inform and adhere to those boundaries. We can't avoid all of the hard yards, and we do need to remain alert to where they need to be in the hands of human beings. The other thing about trusting it is that we've seen some examples of articles that have misled people. At Reason, we develop our own ideas in an initiative called Reason Labs. We're in a lucky position of having knowledge of a lot of cause areas, and we can see the patterns and issues that arise time and time again. One of the ideas that we have in development is a tool for critical thinking, highlighting outlandish claims and then using AI to make them even more outlandish to help people test their tolerance for unreliability and trustworthiness. So it shouldn't be biased. The data sets are biased though, and I think that AI is copying a problem that's kind of the whole wealth of human knowledge on the internet right now. So anything generated from that data set will also be biased. The same tools that help us show bias could help us show bias rather than hiding it. And we can take the fight to the data. AI could be applied into currently biased environments for good. One such problem is self advocacy in healthcare. For marginalised groups, it can be harder to be heard and receive care at the doctors. A lot of us have been there, trying to have our pain taken seriously by an overworked and therefore dismissive doctor. We're refining an idea for an AI powered healthcare advocate, which will help individuals plan the conversations they want to have, take notes during the conversation, and offer prompts of questions and requests. This could have a transformative impact on the healthcare experience, uniquely possible with a transparent conversational AI tool. And if you want to talk to us about it, we are just thinking about it and we'd love to have some more ideas, especially if you're an expert in this area. So, in terms of it being disempowering and taking creative tasks away, current generative AI tools are designed to be eye catching. Maybe they're even designed to be attractive to corporate folks who love the idea of taking the annoying creatives out of the process. However, I think these first forays into generative AI are just the sort of cheap, silly versions of what's going to come when creative people fully explore and play with the tools and incorporate them into their processes. This is a case of not against, but through and with. So, thank me later, but if you haven't seen it before, look up abandoned films on YouTube. So, these are creative people that are making trailers for films if they had been made in a different era. So, this is sort of Blade Runner in the 1930s, or a version of Fast and Furious made in the 80s and somewhere in Russia. Um, and Lord of the Rings in the sort of golden age of British filmmaking in the 1950s. So, um, that's you remember when I was talking about the early days of smartphones and streaming videos, seeking out those who are making the absolute best out of AI tools, maybe with not as much money, and therefore using it as a sort of expedient technology. Those are the people that might teach us what the future might hold and how we could potentially help people with it as well. The less visible stuff is a rich playground for us as well. So we've collaborated with Age UK on their telephone befriending service for years. It's a lifeline for thousands of isolated older people in the UK, matching trained volunteers for regular phone calls. With AI, we can audit the transcripts to safeguard against sharing of personal information like hearing bank details and things like that. It remains respectful of of privacy while ensuring that vulnerable older people are safe. And we're collaborating them for new opportunities to help with volunteer matching. And we're working out how we can take some of those repetitive tasks out of back office processes for a pet adoption charity that I wish I could tell you all about, but we're in the middle of the project, so ask me back another time. Um, so I've got a big list for you now. Um, these are the ways that I can imagine you could grouch-proof AI a little bit. I think the key thing really is about being transparent and honest with your use of it, thinking and budgeting carefully how you use those things so you're not being incredibly thirsty about it, managing the data and accepting responsibility for the things that we still need to safeguard for our own brands and for the safety of our users. And use it as a tool for critical thinking, to make services safer, to speed up processes, and taking inspiration from the most creative people. So overall, I continue to be grouchy and I'm always going to hate change, but I can see that AI needs us just as much as we need it. We can influence this technology and we can help people in the process. If you want to have some ideas together, we'd absolutely love that. We'd love to have a chat. We know that everyone's at different stages of thinking about where they are and how they want to use AI, which is why we've produced a workshop to help people explore what their stance is on AI. We've developed our own one and we can share that with you. Or if you've got any more just random thoughts, just give us a shout. We'd love to talk about it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much, Jane. That was really great. And actually, we were talking internally, just saying that we were all loving your session. So, congratulations. Great, great session.
Thank
I'm
you.
just having a look to see if any questions have come in, and I don't think that we've got any specifically at the moment. Not sure if I'll just have a look in the chat, see if anything is in there. No, everyone's very quiet,
All
which
over.
is
Fine.
very unusual. Just double check that. No, but we're nearly sort of come to the end of your session, so thank you so much for sharing that.
That's
Actually,
all
one
right.
question that I was wondering was how does AI open or sort of track its environmental input?
Yeah, so I was looking at that while I was putting the slides together, and you picked on the bit that I'm the least comfortable about at the moment. I think that we're kind of dependent on information from the companies themselves that are creating the tools to be honest about their environmental impact. We have looked at it, and we're working on how we can do it better. My feeling is that if we can start pulling that information together and visualizing it, then we're able to produce the dashboards and put that beside the tools themselves. Then we're
Brilliant.
helping we're helping our clients to kind of we can in collaboration make informed choices about how we make use of AI.
Great stuff. Thank you. Right, that's obviously people were shy because we've got quite a few that have come in now. We've had one from Jane with, gosh, that's had 6 likes, upvotes. And Jane asks, what is the biggest challenge getting buy-in from senior leaders to invest in AI?
I think you've got to meet your senior leaders where they are right now. So we went through this process ourselves as an organization, and I think we've got a real sort of mixed bag of enthusiasm. So, um, as I explained, I'm very much the grouchiest person in the room, going, "Oh, so can't do." So I can embody that person for you. I think what you need to show them is that it is already happening and that they need to be involved in this. Um, from my perspective, the reason we do this, especially as people working for social impact, is to make sure that the tools aren't impacting vulnerable people and that we are actually using them to help people. So if you don't get involved, then you are leaving it to the corporate interests. I think that's one argument that can work with people, but you've got to allow people the space to kind of express their concerns. It's exactly what I've done in this presentation. I've talked through all my concerns and then gone, all right, well, what do we do about those? So that's why we've kind of produced a format for kind of discussing your ethical stance on AI. Um, we've done it ourselves and sort of produced a document, so we can share that with you, and you can get an example of that. But from that starting point, you can go, okay, are we comfortable to dip our toes into the water? Maybe get a couple of trial licenses to use it internally on a few tasks. That might be the first thing people are comfortable with, before you move into, oh, we're just going to spit out loads of conversational content to our service users. Probably not, but it might be that the first thing you want to do is start scanning transcripts and checking for issues in the safeguarding. That feels like something that can only be useful rather than actually being sort of risky to anyone. So, um,
Brilliant.
yeah, I think you can start with those things.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Rachel has asked, and that's had 10 votes. Can you talk a little bit more about how you've used AI to triage support for beneficiaries?
Um, Triage support for beneficiaries. So I think the key example at the minute is working with Age UK on their telephone befriending service, and that isn't around triaging support. That is around looking at the calls and making sure that less humans need to be listening and reading transcripts and searching through them for safeguarding purposes. So that's not taking them out of the process; it's just flagging things, and then a human can come and check those ones that have been flagged. So it's important at that point. It's better to have a whole bunch of false negatives than the opposite, where you're missing things. Um, so that's where we've tried it first. I think what we're looking at now is around matching processes, where you might want to match a pet to an adopter, for instance, or match a telephone befriending volunteer to an individual who wants to have a phone call every week. So we haven't done as much with triage yet.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. What time? We've probably got time for at least another one, potentially two questions. Okay, so Lisa asks, on the flip side, persuading senior leadership, how do you suggest supporting frontline staff who may be worried, understandably, that use of AI will take away their jobs, which I know is a big worry.
100%, and I think, that's what I was it's the same feeling I get with generative AI and creative people, where you look at the way that, the technology has been developed just seems to be like, "Let's get rid of the stupid artists that are rubbish and just get a computer to do it instead," which seems insane to me because these are the talented people that have come up with these ideas in the first place that AI is stealing. So it doesn't make any sense. Um, it's the same with this. I think, especially for charities or organizations that need to seek funding to support services, um, there all of the people that we work with that have help desks and are receiving telephone calls are massively overrun. And lots of the calls, like 60% of them or something, are the same conversation over and over again. If we can take some of those out, that allows those really skilled and experienced people to be working on the more complex issues. So in the same way, we were talking about triaging before. We've done this with sort of slightly more kind of canned conversational triage in the past, like around bereavement triaging for crews, for example. Um, and it's not going to you're not forcing people to do this, but if you can self-select them into conversations which do cover the most common tasks and signpost them to those resources, then you are letting the kind of trained people that work on the help desk deal with much more complex stuff that is probably equally as time consuming, but creates more impact for the individuals.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. We've take a swig of coffee. We've talked you out, Jane. Thank you ever so much. There's a couple of unanswered questions that we'll try and get answered in the follow-up resources that go out. But thank you ever so much. That's all we've got time for. Really appreciate your time, Jane. A fascinating subject. Thank you so much for joining us. So our next session is in 5 minutes at 10:25, and that's designing digital products in co-production with users, and that's with Turn to Us. So thanks everybody, and see you very shortly.